Hello, everyone. Warm good evening to all our esteemed guests and dignitaries on the dais. Today it's a wonderful Sunday, first week of July and first Sunday of July, and we are here to talk about a very interesting topic on integrating pharmacotherapy in tobacco cessation. Now we move towards a scientific session. I'm happy to introduce to all our audience the moderator for the evening, Dr. Nandita Divekar. She is a consultant in anesthesia and critical care at Medway NHS Trust in UK. She's a lead for smoking cessation in her hospital and very passionate about the cause. She was pivotal in starting the STOP, the Stop Before the Op clinic. She and her two colleagues were awarded the CEO Award for Brilliance to study the Ottawa model, and recently she had been invited to talk about her experiences at the National Smoking Cessation and Health Conference in UK about the smoking cessation modalities. I invite ma'am to kindly take the session ahead.
Thank you, Shruti. Namaste to everyone and welcome and greetings from the UK. How true, isn't it? The world has the same problem, and WHO has described tobacco as the only legal drug that kills many of its users when used exactly as intended by the manufacturers. And if you think, oh, India is different and UK is different, no, we have the same problems, and COVID has actually made it worse sometimes because many people committed to quit, but at the same time, there have been many additional smokers. Thank you very much, Dr. Pawan Gupta, Dr. Reena Kumar, Dr. Desai, and all the dignitaries, and of course, Shruti, for inviting me to this prestigious conference and giving me the opportunity to be a moderator for this session and then come to a conclusion at the end. So I really hope that this conclave is really very successful and we can take it internationally as well. And the next session is on interesting cases, and these are so we've got a wonderful panel here. Shruti, would you like to introduce them?
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. So for the panel discussion, Dr. Nandita herself, ma'am, would be the moderator for the session. We have chairing the sessions would be Dr. Sharad Joshi and Dr. Mandeep Kaur. They are pulmonologists and dental surgeon by profession. The panelists on board, we have a wide range of specialists representing from different departments. So we have Dr. Ripen Gupta, who's from cardiology department, Dr. Simarprit Sandhu, an oral maxillofacial pathologist, Dr. Radha Munji, who's a pulmonologist by profession, Dr. Shubham Jain, thoracic oncosurgeon, and Dr. Chirme Kulkarni, who's a psychiatrist. So I invite all the panelists, the chairperson, and Dr. Nandita on board to begin the panel discussion.
Okay, can you see my slides? I have got it most probably or
maybe, ma'am, I'll share it for you.
Okay.
It'll be easier. Okay. Is it visible?
Yeah. Can you see it?
I'm sharing, ma'am. I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, 1 second.
It's visible. It's visible. It's visible. Okay. And I would request all the panelists to please switch on their camera while and panelists and the previous speakers and chairpersons and others may please, if they want, they can put their camera off so that they are highlighted and we can have a direct discussions with them. And Dr. Nandita, if I can request, if you can take up those questions which have been put on the chat box in the panel.
Yeah. Okay, just 1 second.
Yeah, one of the major question that was being repeated by most of the people was about whether these drugs can be used for SLT, smokeless tobacco. So if we can open up this question for the previous speakers, if they can, anyone would like to answer this? Dr. Malay Dave.
I would be a little bit hesitant about varenicline. Well, because in quite a few patients, it is a bit of a costly drug. So people hesitate to use it. And they would probably take it for a week, 10 days, and then they would say we cannot afford it. So,
So putting the cost apart, let us not take up the cost issue, because I think my patients can afford it. I have got patients who are from cancer background, and a lot of my patients, and it's not a very costly drug for that matter, because it is an affordable drug.
Yes. So one is that I would try. Though I would say that well, since I am primarily going to treat psychiatric disturbances, this would be one of the things along with, I mean, I would say that for most people who use smokeless tobacco, all this I would use at the same time. Varenicline, bupropion, I mean, because it's an antidepressant also, bupropion is pretty good. And NRT, basically the gums or lozenges. Yes, so yes, we can use.
So it's a combination therapy. Dr. Deepak, you want to have any comment?
Yeah, basically, actually, most of the studies have come from the West. So obviously there the smoking is the issue. So this kind of studies have to come up from India, but there are small studies from centers, the academic centers, which does say that there is efficacy and effectiveness of these drugs even in smokeless. We need to a more larger, I guess,
study in India
size,
probably.
yes. Maybe multi-site.
Yeah. Dr. Prabhat also wants to say something, and then we will take up the questions with Dr. Nandita. Yeah.
So if you go by international studies of SLT, that is SNUS, yes, varenicline has been found effective. That's fairly clear. The varenicline has been found effective for SLT as international studies looking at urine cotinine level also, and 7 days of smoke free. Only one study is available at this point of time from AIIMS Delhi, and which they did for the Indian chewing tobacco. And what they found was actually like this: patient did tell that they got benefit, but it's not corroborated with urine cotinine level, which is the more biomarker. Now, this is how at this point of time, but with limited option, obviously, we should probably explore and use it more and more is my thought. Obviously, cost into play, but definitely, even with a cost effectiveness, varenicline looks like a best drug at this point of time. Not in Indian smokeless, but overall, I'm talking about it. So that's how it is. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just for my own personal experience, I have been using this extensively because a lot of my oral cancer patients come up with the chewing tobacco, and I have been extrapolated this all these results, which are the Western results, and have been using it extensively in my smokeless tobacco cases, and with good results. Of course, it needs a documentation that we need to publish so that it can be taken up or do some studies on that. So over to you, Nandita. Sorry to have intervened, but this was something people were keeping on asking in the chat box. So over to you, Dr. Nandita, with your interesting cases, I'm sure. And we will have the interesting cases. And after that, we are going to have a quiz on the topics that we had. And of course, we are going to have a number of prizes for that. So over to you, Nandita. And I think we are already running short of time. So over to you.
Go a bit fast. Yeah. Thank you very much again, Dr. Pavan, for allowing me to present some interesting cases, because the problem still continues. And where I work, I'm originally from Mumbai, and sorry, it's again stopped. I think Shruti, you were right. It's again blocked again, so you'll have to share the screen again. Shall I stop sharing and you can put it on?
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen, ma'am. You can continue. I'm
okay. Okay. So yeah, so I'm originally from Mumbai, born and brought up, and then I moved to UK in 1988 with my husband, and I'm now a consultant for the last 22 years in Medway NHS Trust, which is a 500-bedded district general hospital. We don't do the cardiac neuro specialties and very high specialty. We don't do that, but we have a very low socioeconomic strata there. Their patients are there is loads of unemployment, drug addiction, 3 prisons, and the smoking rates were really, really high. But in the last 3 years since I've taken up the smoking cessation, it has come down, but there's a lot of work to do. So I have some interesting cases. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is Kent, where the Kent variant for COVID was found. So there you go. And can you take the next slide, please? So I had a 50-year-old male patient with a history of hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, and he suffered an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, VF cardiac arrest, witnessed arrest, bystander CPR, and there was return of circulation after 2 shocks. So he was intubated and ventilated and admitted to ICU. He was sedated, and he had developed a non-ST elevation MI. So he was started on the ACS protocol. The next day, he was extubated and he was pleasantly confused. So next slide, please. We then asked, because we have a GP service here, we then asked the GP for further history, and he lives alone. Very, very heavy smoker, 40 cigarettes per day since the age of 15 years. He has been on candesartan and bisoprolol and on simvastatin, and occasional inhalers. The Pulmicort was given by the GP there. Breathlessness occasionally was written in his notes, and next day he was extubated. And again, so he was confused on that day, and the following day, it was my ward round, so my week had started. And he had mental capacity at that time because I spoke to him, he was oriented, lucky, he was very, very lucky. So I gave very brief advice, and at that time I had just done all my trainings, so very, very enthusiastic and read about all the articles and things. So I did give very brief advice, and he was not sure whether he would like to start smoking. And was hesitant to start any treatment. He asked me what was going to happen to him and what would it happen again. And I said, yes, if it happens again, then the next time it will be one of the two H's. And he said, what is that H's? And I said, heaven or hell. So once he heard that, he was really, really petrified about it. And he was advised to stop smoking by the residents as well. So he was really petrified and, not sure what to do. Next question, please. So this is a poll question for everyone. Do you do VBA on a regular basis? Please answer. Oh, equal. All right, sharing the results, 54% said yes and 46% said no. Just have a think why possibly you're not doing it, or is there something stopping you? Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So let me cancel that. So when is the right time to do very brief advice? I would like to ask the question to Dr. Kulkarni, please. Dr. Chinmay Kulkarni, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, so when you are meeting him the first time and you know the history and what has happened, at that time only it is, I think the first day only it is a better time to do the VBA. Because that smoking is related to what he has had, must have been related by something. So on day one,
some of the nurses are actually said, oh, you're scaring him. Are you asking, but I had done it very gently at that time. And then afterwards, when he asked, is smoking really bad for me? And would it cause further problems? I said, yes, I think you have to quit smoking, because sometimes it needs to come from a doctor or somebody who will, tell the importance of stopping smoking. So yes, we did that. Next slide, please. So how would you counsel him then, Dr. Chinmay? How do you think you can counsel?
Yeah, so actually, Dr. Prabhat has already shown us this VBA, AAA, what we call as Ask, Advise and Act. So this is basically for general practitioner or general medicine practitioners. It is for them that whenever they are talking about the illness, like cardiac illness and everything, they can talk for 30-40 seconds about smoking also. So they can ask that person about their smoking status, how long you have been smoking, etc., etc. And means a couple of questions. Then next would be the advice that, okay, the smoking can be influencing your health, and you can use counseling or behavioral techniques and medications together so that you can get rid of this addiction. And the next would be the ACT part of it. That means you can refer them, you can build confidence, give them more information. So it's a very short type of technique. So it is not that you are telling him that, you must stop smoking and all, but rather it is just subtly pushing them, nudging them towards taking some actions to stop, to basically at least try to stop smoking.
That's great, because very brief advice is very important. Very brief advice or VBA is very important. And can I have the next slide, please? The next one. So this was a paper in Primary Care Respiratory Medicine, one of the journals, and they took the experience of general practitioners with very brief advice in the treatment of tobacco addiction. And what they said was, this was done in UK. This is a paper from the UK, but it was mainly done in Holland. And people mainly found no time for giving very brief advice. GPs were worried about that, and they thought that it was actually affecting the relationship with their patients. But it showed that it is a very promising, effort from all of us to help people, and it does improve the rate of quitting as well. Next slide, please. So he wanted to start treatment. Later on, he said to us, he wanted to leave it to us and said that we were the best judges and would listen to whatever we said. But he was very stressed, so possibly was craving for a smoke, which is not allowed in hospital. And he realized that it could be life-threatening for him. So I had gone out of the ward, and the ICU resident was called, and he said, I want advice about it. He had heard about tablets and patches. So the resident doctor rang me up. Next slide. So my next poll question is, how much time do you spend on discussing the options of treatment or smoking cessation? Please answer the question. Okay, more than 5 minutes is 56%, 38% 2 to 5 minutes, and less than 2 minutes. And actually, I'm wondering whether we all get the time to do it, or do we have the passion to do it as well? So next question for Dr. Radha, please. I was just asking, any other symptoms or history would be required? Do you know of any other diseases associated with this problem?
You're on mute. Kindly unmute.
Thank you, Nandita. Everybody is well aware about three things. One is cardiac involvement or disorders related with smoking. Other is cancer. That is very well, people are well aware about it. And of course that it predisposes to hypertension, diabetes, and even mood swings if they don't get. So psychological dependence is another part of it. However, what is equally important, and from my perspective, being a pulmonologist, is that involvement of lungs in various capacities and its expression would give rise to various symptoms in these patients. So one should be aware, and we have always talked about cough, which is there early in the morning, and it may be dry cough or rarely associated with a very small expectoration only in the morning hours. Then another thing which person would be aware, he must be realizing it, but that it needs a doctor to bring it out from the patient, is that does he have shortness of breath, like after performing few activities. So there are few symptoms about which a consultant or a GP must be aware, that the commonest symptoms are of cough, chest pain, shortness of breath, and even wheezing sometimes. These people are known to have recurrent lung infections, and if at all they have expectoration which is blood tinged, I think this is an alarming symptom and needs a rapid referral as well as workup in these cases. Many of these patients also, when they develop COPD, they do complain even about some sort of weakness or wasting of muscles when it is of a long standing duration. So one must be aware of various symptoms with which a patient can present. Of course, GI symptoms are also equally common. One should be aware that if somebody is continuously commenting upon symptoms suggestive of GRD, and if I'm talking about our own Indian perspectives, many patients come out with their own diagnosis saying, Doctor साहब मुझे acidity का बहुत तकलीफ होता है. They do have complaints of retrosternal burning or chest pain. So these symptoms should be warning enough that the smoking has been of a longer duration and has already impacted or started affecting the body.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Radha. I then go on to the next slide, please. So, no, next one. Thank you. So he is craving for a cigarette, slightly confused, and further questioning on he has got moderately high alcohol intake. Dr. Gupta, question for you. You are our friendly cardiologist. What are you going to? What would you do? Dr. Gupta?
Yeah. Basically, from a cardiologist perspective, we are scared about smoking. So first thing which we always ask a patient is, do you smoke? So that is a common question we ask all our patients who come to our OPD. Once a patient comes with the ACS, I use that opportunity to hammer in that they should quit smoking. So that is very important, that we have that luck that patient has come with as an emergency, and we can, you can say, use that opportunity to make him quit smoking. So we use that opportunity a lot of times. It works in around 30-40% of the patients. They will quit smoking after they have a ACS. They are in an ICU, staying in ICU, had an angioplasty or a bypass. Around 30-40% will quit smoking. They will not ask me for anything. They'll say, we have stopped it. Rest, we have to work hard. We have to take help. I sometimes use the help of my colleague, psychiatrist colleague with me. He will guide those patients. We'll call him in for the consultation in the OPD or in the inpatient, and he will guide us. This is how I approach a patient who is a smoker. But for us, it is a very, very serious symptom. And the good thing is that from cardiology perspective, if you stop smoking, all the ill effects wane off in 3 to 4 years time. So that is a very huge incentive which we give our patient, that okay, from cardiology perspective, if you leave smoking, all the side effects or harmful effects of smoking for heart at least will go away in 4 years time. So that is a huge incentive. They feel okay, so that I'm rid of one risk factor for having heart disease. So I think this is a positive influence, and I am able to help a lot of patients quit smoking using counseling in the OPD or in the emergency when they have come with the chest pain and all. It helps in a lot of patients.
That's great. That's great. The next question, please, for me. Next slide. So again, the same question for you, because my resident rang up the cardiologist as to when do we start treatment, and is early treatment recommended, because he was in ICU, just woken up from a cardiac arrest, extubated. And how early is early? What are our options? Dr. Gupta, again for you.
Yeah. So you see, there is nothing like an early patient is stable. He is out of a cardiac arrest. He had, if he had a intervention done, that is fine. If he has stabilized on medicine also, then it's okay. We will not delay the treatment. In fact, the first call to my psychiatrist friend will go while the patient in the ICU itself. So we don't delay any treatment, because our treatment is going side by side. And we want the patient to be helped on this aspect also, because if we can make him quit smoking, we know that the second event, coronary event, can be prevented. So we don't delay treatment at all. That is my protocol, that a patient comes to the ER emergency, once he's stabilized, we'll be hammering in for stopping smoking, getting a psychiatric consult in-house, and starting treatment in the CCU itself, not in the OPD or later on, in the CCU itself.
And do our other panel members agree that we should start treatment as soon as possible? And our
Yes.
chair people here, there as well. That's great.
Yes,
What are the
There is a
options?
saying which goes, Nandita, there is a saying which goes कि जब लोहा गर्म है तभी उसको पीटना चाहिए, and that is
right.
what Dr. Ripen has underlined, you know.
So I did it right by starting treatment immediately then. Yes.
And also I believe it's a teachable moment because, you know, the patient is quite going to listen, is in a fear, and doctor is like treated like God because the doctor is going to rescue. And I'm sure the words of the doctor are going to have a huge impact. And this teachable moment is very important to be, you know, cashed on. That's what I feel. And I do agree with Dr. Gupta on what he said. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
The important thing is that when the patient himself will ask, doctor, why did I have this heart attack, or why I have this problem?
Yeah.
So if you say that this smoking is the reason, 90% is caused due to smoking, then it is hammered on into him that this is the main risk factor which has caused him so much trouble. So I think that is very important. So we always try to emphasize this point.
Only time they're really listening to the doctor because the doctor is the savior, and savior is treated as God. So the right moment to hammer it in.
And what are the options, Dr. Gupta? Then what are the options you think which we have?
You see, I'll take usually help of my friend Dr. Madhusudan Solanki. He is a psychiatrist in our hospital. Initially, he will advise nicotine patch if the patient has a lot of craving. And in few patients, he started Champix also, where the patients were having a very heavy smokers. Like you have described, a patient who was taking 40 cigarettes, so he cannot just leave smoking in one day. A lot of patients are in between. They are taking around 5 to 10 cigarettes. Some are taking the cigarettes once or twice a week, not every day. So there, I think no help is required. Just this hammering in is enough. They will not ask for any help. So in mild smokers, I think just simple counseling helps in a lot of patients. But heavy smokers or serious smokers will require some form of treatment. I usually leave it to my colleague, Dr. Madhusudan. He's a psychiatrist to take care of this aspect. Counseling part I do on my own. Then I hand over to him to do further counseling. And mostly we are able to get around more than half the patients to quit smoking at the end of 1 year. Because initially everyone will quit smoking, but after 2-3 months, some of them will start smoking once they feel better and all. But with his help, I think the phase gets strengthened and more people are out of this problem.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So I wanted to ask Dr. Radha, what treatment has started? What side effects would you expect? And is there any non-pharmacological methods you are using for these patients as well?
It depends on what you are using for de-addiction or cessation in these people. And if you are using some form of nicotine replacements, then local side effects are very well known. So there can be dryness in mouth, and if other drugs are used, then there would be some GI symptoms in acceptance. Then as has been told by other panelists, that if bupropion is being used, then there may be some issues related with seizures or hallucinations or tachycardia, or even cardiac complications are very well known. Whereas if you are using varenicline, then again nausea, headache, vomiting, drowsiness, there would be some issues even with sleep disorders they may have, or they may also complain of some change in taste. I personally feel that these are not side effects of change in taste, but maybe the perception of the person, because as it is their feeling of being happy or experiencing those happiness after taking not only the smoke or the cigarettes or tobacco, but even it might be affecting their other food intake also. I'm not sure. We have more experts who can explain it to us.
Okay. Thank you. Next slide, please. We are sort of so the next one. So, Dr. Shubham, a question for you. What other systems do you have in your hospital to support such patients? Who advises patients? Are there any specific teams? Do you have a trained counselor? Do you have the resources?
So first of all, thank you, Dr. Nandita, for having me here in such an important, informative session. We see such patients quite frequently in our hospitals, and tobacco addiction is actually the pandemic as of now. But unfortunately, truly speaking, I don't think the hospital systems are truly aligned inter-department to have these patients catered to appropriately. We still do not have systems in place for the tobacco cessation entirely. The patients actually would stay with the primary physician who they have come for, or the emergency has referred them to. And the each smoker, depending on his tobacco addiction, should actually get screened and routed through all the departments, with the tobacco cessation specialist being at the core of the management team, who can counsel them about the effects and actually also advise them for the various tests that need to be done. Now, for example, I'm a surgical oncologist. I see all these patients as very high risk for having cancer. So I feel that screening for cancers, especially for oral cavity cancers or for lung cancers, is equally important in these patients who at this point of time are very receptive to the idea of probably having these diseases or getting these tests done. So yes, that is a genuine need, but I still feel that it's an unmet need in the hospital, which needs to be aligned.
Right. Yes. I think it's the same in our hospital. We have no, I'm the only person. I have no team as such. I have to develop a team in my own time. And we try our best, but that's how it is the situation. Hopefully we should get. Next slide, please. We've asked you about the adverse events and all, which and side effects which can occur, Dr. Radha. One of the adverse events, possibly, next slide, sorry, we'll skip this, okay, because we have already spoken, is if there is a further MI and death, will this be reported as an adverse event to the drug used? Dr. Gupta, what is your feeling about it?
Muted.
You're muted, Dr. Gupta.
Yeah, I think that this recurrent MI will be more of a disease process rather than a side effect of a medication, number one. Secondly, sometimes we do an angioplasty, patient can have a stent thrombosis because of that also. So our treatment can also lead to repeat MIs. And once a patient has a milieu of having a MI, he can his chances of having a recurrent MI is 15 to 30% in the next 6 months. Okay. So I'll not blame the medication on the recurrent MI, though patient may have different, Indian patients tend to have a different connotation. They put everything on the treatment you have given them. But clearly, I think smoking cessation and the treatment is paramount. So I never hesitate in anything required for this patient.
So you will continue the treatment?
Madam, as I said, that the chances of any serious adverse events by continuing the treatment in a heart patient is very low due to medications. While if he continues to smoke, chances of having stent thrombosis and all complications which we face in our patients is much higher. So I'll be clear that we should not be smoking after the first event. And if you have to take help of medication, I don't hesitate in that.
Okay,
right,
thank you.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to label any event which occurs as an ADR related to a particular drug. So you need to have a very detailed history of what has really happened. If something has happened at home, or like patient did not reach the hospital and it has already happened at home, there is something like a verbal autopsy, which would only let you know what has been the events, what has happened. Or perhaps he had really had symptoms earlier also for which he did not report. There are many issues and I don't think we would be able to go deeply into that. But I would say that I agree with Repain, but still taking a detailed history of events which has occurred would allow you to really know whether it was really related. Some event, I would not say death due to drug, but some event which was related with the drug intake.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Shruti. Next slide, please. So, Dr. Shubham, what happens on discharge? Who follows up the patients?
So I think on discharge, it is the standard advice of the primary physician that is actually with the patient, and generally they report back to the same doctor. Now it is the doctor's prerogative to guide these patients through a tobacco care specialist and through other branches while the patient is receptive, so as to initiate the proper healing process for this patient.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask Dr. Sandhu, how often do you follow up the patients? How often would you like to follow up?
So yes, like I've been hearing everyone, and I would really like to follow up very regularly. But then, like I do agree with Shubham also, that yes, there isn't a proper, system in terms of the patient might, return for the second time, but most of the times the patient is lost. I would really like to go into at least 5 years or sometime just to see what's happening, because there is relapse also, and we know all that happens. But most of the time, sadly, because I do biopsies, and what we get is patients when we see them are because I'm an oral specialist, so we see the consequences of repeated SLT abuse, and also coupled with smoking and coupled with many other factors. And so what we see is the compliance also, maybe because the problem is at our end, and also maybe the problem is with the patient's end, but the compliance is not really, I'm not really satisfied with, the follow-up story. So I am on a panel today, and believe me, I'm very motivated. So I'll also like to improvise and take lessons from, or take home lesson, and see what I can do to improvise that and work with my team to make it better, to be more coordinated. And yes, I would like to follow much more than what I do.
Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. The question would be for Dr. Radha and Dr. Kaur as well. Next one. No. So has COVID-19 changed or affected the management of these inpatients and their follow-up? Dr. Radha first and Dr. Kaur after that, please.
Thank you. We have actually, myself have not personally done a follow-up related with cessation, but my experience in my own field says that with onset of COVID pandemic, as such people are staying at home, nearly locked up. They do not have any chances of interacting with people, no recreation. So many of them would have bounced back to their addictions of smoking. That is just my contemplation. Second important thing is that even if they were due for a follow-up or a refill, at least in India, very few patients have turned up for a follow-up for any non-COVID cause, be it follow-up with cardiologist or their other routine consultations for hypertension, diabetes, and all this. Unfortunately, because we did not have a vision of that, even if we started with teleconsultation for COVID or any other issues, I don't think there have been much done on this front of teleconsultation for continuation or follow-up of de-addiction or say cessation of smoking in these patients, and it would have definitely helped. But yes, COVID has affected and must have affected in a larger context than we know as of now.
Dr. Kaur?
Yes, I agree with Dr. Radha ma'am that definitely if we had asked those questions, or we had a dedicated number for following up our patients, it would have made a lot of difference. And in the COVID, the pandemic time, we were offering teleconsultation at our institute, but it was mostly, at that time, the issues that the patients were bringing up were mostly toothache, severe toothache, which they couldn't handle. They wanted medication for that. Nobody really comes nobody comes forth with an issue that, I want to quit habit. They're probably a very rare person, who comes to a medico or a dental institute for that kind of thing. So yes, we did lose up on that. Yeah, it has brought forward a good point that although we had the data in our institute, because we have a TCC center, I didn't think of following up with patients. They could have. that's a good point which has come out from this discussion. So yes, that did suffer, and mostly in dental institutes. I am being an oral medicine specialist. Mostly the patient comes to know or is motivated to quit when we find a lesion in their mouth. And tobacco consumption history is a mandatory part of our dental institutes. I'm a professor in that college, so we do teach our students that you have to ask these questions, and how to ask this question also has come out from here. But no, it hasn't been a part of the COVID-19 in this not as a focused way. So yes.
I wanted to ask, do you use carbon monoxide monitoring? Because they've taken it out from our list during COVID periods.
Not during the COVID period. In fact, we've hardly been able to examine patients intraorally also. We have to go really close to examine our patients, So it did get suspended in between. Let's hope we can start that again. We do that carbon monoxide, yes.
Our COVID services our stop smoking services are really affected, because we used to get people from the council, like what we call municipality, or they used to come and help us for the stop before the op clinic. They are not allowed to come. So I have to, we have to do everything ourselves. So basically, I had to gather a few pharmacists, ward clerks, and all to do all the work. So it is, very nice.
I had a point here. For me, I think COVID was an opportunity for people to actually leave tobacco. Because people were scared of COVID, the lungs being affected and everybody. So, and the second thing was, for some time, it was not even readily available. And third, yes, we started with, an NGO. We started something like Quit Spreads Death, wherein, it was really taken up by a lot of organizations where they were motivating people, and, the certificates were, the online quizzes were done, the videos were circulated. So I think if we get into that, I'm pretty sure few of the people did get scared of COVID, and how your lungs would be affected with smoking, and how spitting spreads death, and all that put together. I think there might be, might be some decrease or maybe leveling. So because the fear factor of COVID was really there. So that was an opportunity. So let's see if we do see what happens. And if you follow it.
Was a success story for. Sorry, Dr. Chinmay, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I think actually it was two things happening together. What Dr. Sandhu said, that is also true, that people were scared that their smoking and is going to affect their lungs. But at the same time, some time back, we checked the triggering factors. What are the factors which can trigger smoking? And they are also there. During the COVID lockdowns, people are lonely, they are not going out, they are bored, many people are anxious, work life, they are losing jobs, and they are very stressed, financial stress is there, plus work-life balance has been affected majorly due to the work from home environment, because now you are not all the time you are at work. So these factors were also there, which were triggering more smoking.
But I also have a factor in the Indian scenario. I believe when you are with your family, you really don't smoke in front of your parents.
Yes.
One. And number two, also when you're with your colleagues, you go out on the terrace and have a fag. So that thing also was missing. So this was an opportunity, because I know most of the people I knew who were doing hookah parties. Believe me, COVID really scared them, and hookah parties really stopped. So, there was a boon and a bane of the situation. So, yeah, we need to study and see what it really did, and that's a very interesting path that we can walk on and see what was the reality.
Yeah. So, I think. Yeah. So I don't know about the patients with cardiological issues or respiratory issues, but our psychiatric patients, some of them used it as an opportunity to kind of for smoking de-addiction, because we used to earlier tell them, no, you can try, I will start some medicine for that, but they would say, no, let me get treated for depression first, and then later we will see about smoking. But that later never used to come. So at least during the lockdown, we used that as an opportunity to push for smoking the addiction also. So some of them use, some of them stayed away from smoking for 2 months, 3 months till the lockdown, and after that again they started. So,
and you would be pleased to know that this was a success story. A patient quit smoking, and I think he listened to me. He came and thanked me afterwards, saying that, you know, you are the main person who helped me stop smoking. I was going to present another case because it was they're very interesting cases, but we have shortage of time. We had overrun previously. So really, thank you very much. And Dr. Pawan, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I don't know whether Dr. Sandhu and Dr. Kaur want to have some remarks about what was discussed during this session, and we then go on to the next one.
Yes, I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Nandita. That was wonderfully conducted the whole day. I really enjoyed the program. Thank you so much, iCanCare. Thank you for inviting us here. A lot of interdisciplinary approaches where we heard different viewpoints. You would have never come across this kind of a scenario. And Dr. Reena, ma'am, thank you so much. I think your vision, and thank you for involving me. It's been really, eye-opening, because we do this, but on a very, counseling on a small scale and maybe some NRT, but hearing different viewpoints, very engaging discussion and a lot of insights here. And I learned, how to, because we teach students, they are the ones who will go and spread the message, right? So very important not to ridicule the patient, mantras for success, fixing the quit day. So, you have a goal-oriented approach there. And the pulmonologist viewpoint, do ask about other symptoms like shortness of breath and, GI symptoms. So we avoid all that. We do take a medical history, but I think I can add these couple of questions when we ask about the tobacco history. The cardiologist perspective, because they say that's too late and the patient is already in ACS, and they do ask for interdisciplinary consultation. And so important to counsel the patient much before. Probably I can start talking to my patients, and, when they come in that, you might get a heart attack, and why wait till then? You can probably start, looking after yourself much before that. So, and very, very important, Dr. Shubham, need to align the hospital care team around the patients. Excellent, because we approach the patient from the viewpoint of the doctor, but I think we have to turn around and, from the viewpoint of the person who's so sort of intimidated by the entire hospital setup. So we need somebody who can, take him around the hospital to his particular need, and one of them, TCC being most important, how to integrate that from his perspective. I think a very important point, very close to my heart, this particular point, And so, yes, we do need to develop a team for that. Dr. Nandita, you put up that point across very nicely, that yes, we do need to have a team in place for, to look after that one person who's trying to quit a habit. One success story. Start from there. Very important. Absolutely. Wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much for a lovely discussion here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pawan, you have been instrumental in all these things. Can you give us a last word on this session, please?
Thank you so much, Dr. Nandita, and all the panelists. It has been really wonderful. Yes, one thing that I can see on what we have been doing at iCanCare, and that is creating more and more people, engaging more and more people from different specialties into quitting tobacco, into helping the patients, into guiding the patients. Just telling the patient will make a lot of difference, but then proper intervention and guidance is what is important. And here what Dr. Shubham and what Dr. Kaur has just put in, one thing is very important. We need to have specialists, tobacco specialists. Dr. Reena had very much clearly put in her inauguration speech that quackery in tobacco cessation is very rampant. We need to change this quackery into specialization. We need to have specialized doctors available. So availability with skilled doctors is a very important aspect that we need to consider, and we need to put it everywhere, and we need to have those things in every department. So this is where iCanCare is working to create skilled doctors, create every department, every hospital need to have this specific department of tobacco cessation by a specialist or certified doctors who can actually help out in and here, one thing that also Dr. Kulkarni is here. See, a lot of our patients, when we tell to these patients to go to a psychiatrist, they may not actually feel like going to a psychiatrist. You know, they would avoid going to psychiatrists. So we need to have specialized doctors. Specifically, I talk about the dental doctors who can take up this issue and help this patient in a building. In helping this patient to quit. So it has been a wonderful panel discussion, and a lot of points have been taken out. What I'm going to do is basically at ICANN-Care, we are having this 2-hourly session for the next 3 Sundays, and then we will be having a consensus how to put all these things together, whatever we have been discussing. So please do keep tuned with us for all the Sundays so that we can have more and more discussions and more points can come up, and which we can actually come up with some consensus guidelines how we can take it over.